I knew my week was about to explode the moment I heard furious knocking on my front door, because only one person in this entire neighborhood knocks like she's trying to break into a bank. Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. And this time, she came ready for war. The moment I opened the door, she shoved a bright orange violation notice inches from my face and barked, "You can't park there!" "Park where?" I asked, genuinely confused. "In your garage," she shouted, like she had just caught me committing a felony. And I swear for a moment I was convinced I misheard her. My garage? My property? The space I pay for, maintain, and literally own? She said it with such authority, like she had just delivered some divine law written on stone tablets. Karen jabbed her finger toward my garage like it was a crime scene. The HOA regulations clearly state that garages must remain free of vehicles for aesthetic consistency. She said those words without blinking, as if she didn't realize how insane they sounded. I stepped closer. "Karen, it's a garage. Cars go in garages." Her face tightened into that signature expression she saves for moments when she thinks she's winning, a twisted mix of smugness and superiority. "Not in this neighborhood," she snapped. Then she added, "I'll be issuing fines starting today. Daily. No exceptions." I stared at her, stunned. This had to be a joke, a prank, a hidden camera moment. Who fines someone for parking inside their own garage? But Karen wasn't joking. She was dead serious and vibrating with HOA power. I took a deep breath. "Karen, you can't fine me for using my own property. That's not how rules work." Her smile widened. "Watch me." She turned around with a dramatic flip of her hair, storming off like she had just declared victory in some imaginary battle. But she didn't know something very important. Something that would turn her entire world upside down. Something that would make her regret starting this war. I had a lawyer. A very, very good lawyer. And he loves people like Karen. Before the sun even set, I gathered every document, every picture, every bylaw I could find. If Karen wanted to fight, I would fight. And unlike her, I actually knew the rules. She thought she could bully me into submission. She thought her clipboard was more powerful than my rights. She thought she was untouchable. She was about to learn the hard way that she wasn't. By the next morning, the situation had already escalated far beyond a simple neighborhood disagreement. Karen had delivered not one, but 3 additional violation slips, all taped dramatically across my garage door like warning signs in a crime drama. She strutted around the cul-de-sac with the confidence of someone who believed the entire community revolved around her clipboard. I watched her from my window, shaking my head as she lectured a terrified neighbor about lawn height. She thrived on tiny rules, twisting them into weapons. But today, she had picked the wrong battle. I had already emailed my lawyer every detail, every photo, and every absurd violation she had issued. When he called me back, his tone was half amusement, half disbelief. After reviewing the bylaws, he confirmed what I already suspected. Karen had absolutely no authority to regulate what I did inside my own garage. In fact, several of her rules weren't even real, they were interpretations. She'd invented to feel powerful. My lawyer didn't just want to stop her, he wanted to shut her down completely. "Document everything," he said. "Every slip, every conversation, every attempt she makes to intimidate you." So I did. I recorded her confrontations. I photographed her notices. I saved every email she sent. Karen was building her own downfall. Later that afternoon, Karen approached me again, fury burning behind her sunglasses. "You're still parking in there?" she hissed, pointing at my perfectly normal, perfectly legal garage scene. I calmly held up my phone, recording. She immediately straightened her posture, realizing she was on camera, but she still couldn't resist lecturing me about her imaginary regulations. That's when my lawyer arrived on site, stepping out of his car like a calm storm. Karen's expression shifted from superiority to confusion. He introduced himself professionally, then asked her to cite the exact bylaw giving her authority. She froze. For the first time, Karen didn't have an answer, and she knew it. Karen's confidence evaporated as my lawyer calmly explained that not only was she violating multiple HOA guidelines herself, but she was also exposing the entire board to legal consequences for enforcing rules that didn't exist. Neighbors slowly gathered, whispering as they realized something big was unfolding. Karen tried to recover, claiming she had verbal approval from the HOA, but my lawyer shut that down instantly, stating that verbal rules have no legal standing. Her face flushed red, her voice cracking as she tried to regain control of the situation. But every excuse she offered only made her look more desperate, more exposed, more powerless. For the first time, she understood that her reign of intimidation had a limit, and she had finally crossed it. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything she had ever thrown at us before today. Karen didn't show up the next morning. For someone who normally circled the neighborhood, like a vulture waiting for the smallest infraction, her sudden disappearance was suspicious. But I knew better. She wasn't retreating. She was plotting. And sure enough, just after noon, she returned with backup, 2 HOA board members who looked like they'd been dragged there against their will. Karen marched up my driveway like a general leading an army. "We're here to conduct an official inspection," she announced, her voice dripping with false authority. The board members exchanged awkward glances, but said nothing. It was obvious they weren't on board with her theatrics. I folded my arms. "Inspection for what?" "For continued violations of HOA structural usage," she replied confidently. "My garage is not a structural usage violation, Karen." She shoved a printed packet toward me, the same outdated bylaws she'd been weaponizing for months, but this time, she had highlighted random sections in neon pink, hoping they'd look official. Before she could speak again, my lawyer stepped out of my house behind me. He had been reviewing additional documents and was more than ready. Karen froze when she saw him. "Oh, you again," she muttered under her breath. My lawyer smiled politely. "Yes, and I hope today will finally put an end to this." He handed Karen a thick, freshly printed cease and desist letter. "This includes documented instances of harassment, unauthorized enforcement of non-existent rules, and misuse of HOA power. If you continue this behavior, we will pursue legal action, not just against you, but against the board for allowing it." The board members' eyes went wide. One of them whispered, "Karen, you didn't tell us any of this." Karen stammered, "He's bluffing. He's making it sound worse than it is." My lawyer opened his tablet, displaying recordings. Every argument, every threat, every absurd accusation she'd made. "This is just a fraction of the evidence," he said calmly. The board members stepped aside, privately reviewing the files he offered. Their faces shifted from confusion to embarrassment to shock. They looked at Karen with disbelief, realizing how far she'd manipulated them. "This isn't legal," one finally said. "None of this is enforceable. Karen, you can't fine someone for parking in their own garage." Karen's voice cracked. I was trying to maintain neighborhood standards." "No," my lawyer replied. "You were abusing your authority. And it stops today." For the first time since this entire nightmare began, Karen had no clipboard to hide behind, no rule to twist, no power left to cling to. She looked small, fragile even. It was the beginning of her unraveling. And the board knew it too. Everything was finally shifting. The entire neighborhood felt it. The HOA board scheduled an emergency evening meeting, one that would determine Karen's fate. Word spread quickly, and by the time I walked into the clubhouse, nearly every neighbor had shown up. People who normally avoided HOA drama were now sitting front row, eager to see how the saga would end. Karen sat at the center table, arms crossed tightly, her jaw clenched. Her clipboard, usually glued to her hands, sat untouched beside her. She already looked defeated, though she tried hard to mask it behind forced confidence. The board chair cleared his throat. "We're here to discuss multiple grievances filed against our HOA president, Karen. These include misuse of authority, harassment, and the creation of unauthorized regulations." Karen shot up from her seat. "Harassment? I was enforcing order. If I didn't step in, this neighborhood would fall apart." Murmurs rippled through the room. A few neighbors exchanged whispers. Others rolled their eyes. Everyone had a Karen story. She just didn't realize how many people she had pushed. My lawyer stood, calm, steady, deadly accurate. He presented every piece of evidence with precision. Recordings of Karen threatening fines, photos of her bogus violation notices, screenshots of her emails where she twisted rules and invented new ones. The board members listened, pale and overwhelmed. Karen shrank deeper into her chair with each example. Her confidence evaporated completely. When my lawyer projected the HOA bylaws onto the large screen and highlighted the section explicitly, stating owners had full rights to use their garages however they wished. The room fell silent, a heavy silence. Then the board chair spoke in a low, disappointed voice. "Karen, none of this was within your authority. You grossly exceeded your role." Karen stood again, her voice trembling this time. "I was only trying to keep things organized. People break rules all the time. If I don't enforce them, who will?" One neighbor finally snapped. "You fined me because my trash bin was visible for 5 minutes." Another added, "You threatened to tow my car because it was too shiny." Laughter broke out, then applause. Then another wave of complaints spilled forward. Everyone had been fed up for months. Karen looked around, realizing she had no allies left. Not one. The board voted unanimously. Karen was removed from her position immediately. Her enforcement privileges were terminated, and every bogus fine she had ever issued, including mine, was officially voided. As I walked out, neighbors thanked me. Some hugged me. Others joked about finally being free. My lawyer gave me a satisfied nod. Karen sat alone at the long table, staring at her clipboard. The empire she built on fear and fake rules had collapsed completely, and my car remained exactly where it belonged, inside my own garage. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps me bring more stories like this, so don't forget to engage before you leave.